But at high noon, the guns fire and the cannons go off and the flags go down and 50,000 people rush for free land. The land run was a unique way of opening the public lands. Since the 1860s, Congress had a policy on the books called the Homestead Act. And the Homestead Act said that anyone who would move to the frontier onto public domain and would stay for 5 years and make improvements and satisfy all of those conditions, they would receive title to the land. It was basically free land to encourage settlement. The West was virtually settled, at least through the arable lands, so the high plains, the southern plains, through Kansas, into New Mexico, through Arkansas. And so all of the land around us is settled in the 1860s, 1870s, and into the 1880s. Well, all of this time, Oklahoma is withheld from settlement as the Indian Territory. Starting in the 18-teens, Congress and the President started moving tribes out of the old Southeast, out of the Midwest, out of the Atlantic coast states, and moving them to Oklahoma until we had 39 tribes here. So from the 18-teens to 1892, all of these Indian tribes are sent here. So it's this one vast Indian reservation. As other reservations are abolished and those lands are open, here's this one last island of arable land that can be farmed, that can be ranched, that's valuable, and everyone wants it. Well, in 1889, there are no more tribes to bring into the territory. But yet there's one parcel right in the middle of the Indian Territory that's unassigned. And so it gets its name, the unassigned lands. Today it goes from roughly Stillwater, Oklahoma on the north to Norman, Oklahoma on the south, where OSU and OU are located today, from Shawnee on the east to El Reno on the west. It's about 6 counties of Oklahoma, not owned or settled by any other Indian tribe. So Congress decides we are going to open this under the Homestead Act and let people claim the land. Well, how do you do it? It's a small parcel of land, a lot of people wanting the land, and so if you take the political philosophy of the time, laissez-faire government, government needs to step back into the shadows, keep your hands off of daily life, let the free enterprise system work. Secondly, a social philosophy, Darwinism and evolution, survival of the fittest, the theory that the fastest and the smartest will survive, the dumbest and the slowest won't. So let's open it up by land run, keep the government out of it, and let people run for it. The first to get to 160 acres of rural land or a town lot in one of the towns claims it, defends it, stays on it for 5 years, gets it for free. So Congress sets a date for the land, the very first land run, April 22nd, 1889, high noon. Well, on that day, 50,000 people line up around the borders of the territory, and at high noon, the cannons go off, the guns fire, the flags go down, a variety of means. 50,000 people rush for free land. About half go to 160-acre farms. The other half go to towns, such as Stillwater and Norman, and Guthrie, which would be the territorial capital, Oklahoma City, this little town in a bend of the North Canadian River. That night, every part and parcel of the unassigned lands is claimed by somebody. These were towns born, grown in one day. Oklahoma City had 10,000 people that night. That morning, only a handful. Guthrie, 10,000 people. And so the land run was this experiment in a way to settle the American West. Was there cheating? Yes. Were there people who came in early? Yes. Were the United States deputy marshals who took advantage of their opportunity? Yes. Were there court cases? Yes, they would drag on for almost a decade. So the laissez-faire government did not work too well, and social Darwinism only worked partially. Yes, the fastest riders, but generally those would have been the cowboys who had the trained Mustangs, who knew the territory because they've been driving cattle across the land. The farmers who may have been the pillars of their communities. If they were in a wagon, had a family, encumbered by a lack of knowledge, maybe they did not get land. So both of those philosophies of government and social evolution were only partially true, but nevertheless, that day, a part of the American West was settled. Well, after 1889, other parts of the Indian Territory were taken away from Indian tribes and put into the public domain. They call it the allotment process. So the federal government would negotiate with the Sac and Fox and the Potawatomi, and so the other tribes are picked off one at a time. Some big parcels, 1893, the biggest of the land runs, the Cherokee Outlet in northern Oklahoma, just on the Kansas border, was opened by land run. 100,000 people made that run. 1901, the last of the real big ones, the old Kiowa and Comanche lands on the southwestern part of the state. All of this was opened in 1901 by lottery. By this time they realized land runs were not working, so let everybody who wants land put their name on a sheet of paper into a hopper, pull it out. The 5th homestead goes to John Smith, and they all celebrate, and then they get their land. Well, then with the 5 civilized tribes, there are so many members of the tribes, generally the land is divided in severalty. The Indian people get their individual lands. By 1906, that process is completed, and in 1907, Oklahoma becomes a state. This is a land of contrast, of diversity, and for a historian like me, and I've been studying Oklahoma history now for 32 years, 18 books, I never cease to be amazed at the pieces of this puzzle that fit together in odd and unique ways that make Oklahoma unlike any other state in the Union.